everyone, and welcome to this week's webinar. This week we're joined by Todd, who is going to be giving us some of his best Excel tips and tricks. This is kind of like a second part to a webinar we already have. So yeah, if you've got any questions throughout the webinar, just pop them in the question box, and Todd will be sure to answer those. And yeah, I'm just going to get started.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is Todd, and yeah, so today I'm going to show you guys several little tips and tricks, and it's going to kind of just run the gamut of different things that have been useful for me over the years. When I say over the years, I actually should be pretty clear about that. It hasn't actually been a long time, and the only reason I say that is to kind of encourage any of you that are newcomers to Excel, or maybe you've just been a casual user over the year and you're trying to, obviously you wouldn't be here if you weren't trying to learn some new things, but I've only actually been using Excel for probably about 8 years. I'd spent about 16 years prior to that in a career role that was more clinically oriented. So I worked in hospitals in direct patient care and sort of a technologist technician role. So I never even sat at a desk job or sat at a computer until about 2009, and that was kind of my first introduction or first experience with Excel on any deep level, and where I had to actually use it for my job. And so, to be honest with you, I didn't really actually get to maybe that power user level until probably not even 5 years ago, because I got into a role that actually required it. I was doing some financial analysis and things like that. So it was it was kind of getting thrown into the deep end, sink or swim. So there were some ups and downs, but along the way one of the greatest lessons I've learned in using Excel is that it is a great tool for solving problems. And I think once I started, my mind shift kind of changed when I started seeing it that way, that it's just kind of this great tool that can help you create solutions to just a myriad of different challenges. It really kind of changed how I viewed it, viewed Excel, and it's really where I started kind of I guess the best way I can put it is kind of corny, sort of a love affair with the software tool. And I have to use it for work anyway, so when I started to really push myself and challenge myself to learn how to use it on a deeper level, it has really been kind of life-changing. And in fact, it's opened up a lot of new opportunities for me as well. So today I want to try and cover some different scenarios, different examples that I have put together to try and show you some things that I think can help you and help you think, not only help you the techniques and the skills, but help you kind of think about how you use Excel in some different ways. Some of this may be really new to some of you. It may not be new to some of you, but hopefully there'll be something new for everybody, maybe more for some of you and less for others. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So some of the objectives that I wanted to cover, these are the main objectives. Now, within these different scenarios are some little tips and tricks along the way in between, which is kind of cool the way this plays out. So every little scenario, even as we look at drop-down lists, how to create drop-down lists, and named ranges, conditional formatting, transposing data from column format to row format, and then look at some ways to format maybe some headers and putting text in diagonal or vertical orientation. Some of these are deeper than others, but within these general ideas, these general scenarios, there'll be other little tips and tricks that I'm going to touch on to kind of bring it all together. So it's kind of a situational process here, and hopefully with that, a lot of these concepts will stick with you. Also, I'm going to actually send the file that I'm using over to Sydney when we're done here, and so it should be available if you guys, I don't know how the guys, how Sydney will set it up, but I'd like to make it available in case they can allow you to download it, take a look at some of the background and nuts and bolts of what I go through today in case you want to go back and just play with these things and then maybe walk through it yourself on your own time. Because I'll probably move pretty fast through some of these so we can get enough content in to make it worth your while. So So the first thing is, actually, I want to go to named ranges first. So creating named ranges is a method where you can give a name to a given range of cells or even a single cell. And the reason why this can be very helpful, it can actually create some great efficiencies in your work, especially when you're working with formulas and things like that. And this is a topic that is only recently kind of come back to the forefront of my mind. I'm actually kind of lazy when it comes to ranges. I just kind of go with what's there. But sometimes, depending on the situation, if you take the time to name ranges at the beginning, it can actually be very useful. So I'll shut up about that and start getting to work here. So let's look at this scenario here. We have this range of data where we have some purchase or purchasing data. So we've got, a product code, description of the item, the quantity that was purchased, and then each price, and then the totals. So let's say you want to sum this. We can do that by simply selecting that range. But if we wanted to, we can select the entire range of totals. And what we can do to name that range, if you'll notice, when I select this cell that the total header is in, you can see that it's cell F2. Well, up here in the name box, which is this little section here, you can see the name of the cell F2. So wherever we move around, it's going to tell you the cell reference or the cell name. But we can also go in here. The simplest way to name a range is select the range you want, and we can just name that. Click in this box, highlight the reference that already exists, and you can just start typing. And what I'll do is I'll just put in totals here. And one of the things to remember about named ranges is there can be no spaces. If you wanted to put in purchase totals, you can't do this. What you'll need to do is you can either remove the space, or you can put like an underscore. And then we just hit enter. And so notice now we've got this drop down. Purchase total shows up in the available named ranges. So if I were to click on that again, it highlights that range. So if I want to, I can name a single cell. So I can put in totals sum. So that's where I want to have the sum of all these totals. Now back again, if I go here in the names box, you can see now total sum is now available. And when I select it, it highlights that cell. So what does that really mean? That's great. So you know how to name ranges. That's really cool. But how is that useful? Well, it can be very useful when you're doing something like formulas. So I can do an equals sum if I want all those. But notice in this tooltip, or notice, I'm sorry, not the tooltip, but the available functions, built-in functions in Excel, there's also this, you've got your named ranges is now available. So if I can type a parentheses to open the formula, and then if I start typing totals, you can see that it's now available just the same as all the built-in functions are, which is really nice. If you know your named ranges, that can help you as you're typing formulas to type it faster. And once I've arrowed down to select that, I can hit a tab and it inputs that. Close my parentheses, and I'm sorry, I selected the wrong one. Let me do purchase totals. There's purchase totals. That's what we need. Now I hit tab to complete that, and then hit enter, and I've got my sum. So pretty cool. Instead of seeing just the actual range of cells, you now see purchase totals. And if you're, if you open up this, workbook that's from somebody else, and you're like, well, what is purchase totals? You can always go to the name range again, the name box, and look at the available selections. And if you click on it, it'll show you, it'll highlight that range, so you can verify, oh yeah, that's exactly what we need. Also, another little tip here, instead of typing equals sum, let me clear this out, just so you guys know. Since this is a contiguous range that we want to sum, meaning there's no spaces, there's nothing in between, we can, there's a keyboard shortcut. It's Alt equals, and all you got to do is type Alt equals, and it does that, and it highlights that range above it, and you can see it automatically does everything we just did in a much shorter form. So just remember that that's the auto sum keyboard shortcut. Again, it's Alt, press Alt, and then while you're still pressing Alt, just press equals, and you're good to go, and you're done there. So the next idea I wanted to show you is we can actually select this entire range of cells for a named range. So we're going to do that now. So I can select this cell D3. And I'm not going to include the headers for this particular case, but if I press Control-Shift down, it'll now highlight that entire range, and I'll continue to hold Control-Shift down and press the right button. And now it's selected this entire range. And so I'm going to use the same method. There's actually another method to name ranges, and I'm going to show you that here in another example. But we'll stick with this. We'll highlight that currently highlighted range, or B3, since that's the first cell in this range. That's what shows up. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to name this one Lookup range, and then just hit enter. So again, now we can see in our names drop down, we've got 3 named ranges. We've got that purchase totals, total sum range, and then our lookup range now. So this is going to be helpful because let's say I've got this table over here and I've got product codes, and I just want to look up the totals from this table. And let's just imagine this is in a different workbook or a different worksheet, and this isn't right here for me to eyeball. Maybe this is, 100 different product codes, so we're going to use a VLOOKUP. So the first thing I want to do is just go ahead and start typing my VLOOKUP. If you're not familiar with VLOOKUP, don't worry about it. This isn't a tutorial on VLOOKUP, but it's pretty simple. You should be able to follow along. So our lookup value is going to be this product code. So I click on that cell reference. But my table array, which is the table I want to look up the total from based on the product code, is now a named range. So I can start typing, if I know what the range is, start typing the name of it, and sure enough you can see it's down here available in this drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and I can arrow down, or I can select it with my mouse, but I'm just going to arrow down, and once it's highlighted, I just hit tab, comma, and my total is 5 rows over from the product code in that lookup table, so that's going to be my column index number. And then I'm just going to put in a 0 for false because I want an exact match. And then we hit enter. So I get 1197, which is obviously the match for that product code. So a real quick little peripheral tip here is I want to fill that down for all of these. And so what I can do is arrow over to this product code range. Since all of these cells have data, I'm going to control down to get to the bottom of the range. If I did that in this total range, if I hit control down, it goes all the way down to the bottom of my sheet. So that's why I arrow over. So I control down and then hit the right button. And then I'm going to do control shift up, and that's going to highlight that entire range. And a real quick keyboard shortcut to fill those formulas in for the rest of those rows is just control D. So it's a real fast way to fill in your formulas. You could have double clicked that fill handle, you could have dragged it down, you could have copied and pasted, but this is actually one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts, is because you can just arrow over, control down, control right, control shift up, and just make sure the total is not involved. What you want to do is include the last cell that has the formula you want to copy down. At least include that at the top of your range, and then control D, and it'll fill down. So one more little thing, one more little tip here. I want these numbers to be in currency format. It's currently in just number format. There's no dollar sign, but there are decimals. And a keyboard shortcut for that, real quick, is just Control 4. That's all 4. I'm sorry, Control Shift 4. Control 4 is obviously, you saw it was underlined. Sometimes I do this so fast and unconsciously I forget to think about it. But so Control Shift 4 changes that to the dollar format. So real quick, you've learned a couple of things. You've learned named ranges. You may have learned a little bit about the Vlookup. If you're unfamiliar with that, you've learned keyboard shortcuts, how to fill down and then change that format real quick to dollar format. So that's it for named ranges. Well, actually, it's not really it for named ranges, just it for that particular example. So the next example, I want to introduce you guys to how to create a drop-down list. And this is one of the cooler, more useful tips in Excel, and it's actually really easy. But if you have friends that don't know how to do it, you can really be their hero. You can really impress a lot of people. It's just a really easy trick. So in fact, we're going to learn a couple of things. We're going to learn how to make a drop-down. We're also going to learn how to make a dependent drop-down. So in this particular case, we have a list of genres for movies. But then we also have lists of movies within those genres. And so what we want to do is create a genre drop-down that allows us to select from these 4 genres. And then once we select one, like we might select romance, we want this second drop-down to be in this cell that would only offer us to select from the romance category only. We don't want every movie in this drop-down. So let's start pretty simple. Let's start with the first drop-down. So in this case, what I want to do is we're going to make another named range. We're going to kind of try to drive that concept home at the same time we learn and look at how to create drop-downs. So I'll go to comedy. I won't include the header. I just need to include the actual list. And so control down selects the entire list. In this particular situation, I'm going to show you another method for naming ranges, and it's actually going to introduce you to the name manager. So on the formulas tab, I'm in Excel 2016, but I think this is pretty similar to 2013, 2010. So you go to the formulas tab, and in the defined names group, you can click on name manager. And so that brings up the name manager wizard. And as you can see, we already have named ranges that exist in this list, and these are the named ranges we just created in our previous example. And what this does is shows you the name. It actually shows you the values in that name range, and then what it refers to. And so down here is what it refers to. So this is telling you creating named ranges is the tab, a worksheet name, and then the cell range that refers to. So if you needed to go in here and you needed to edit, you could always do that. So our lookup range, we can leave a comment in here, in fact, saying, what does this refer to? What does it mean? But then you can go in here and change your refers to if you wanted to change the name range manually. We're going to cancel that. I'm just showing you that. You can also delete the name ranges from here. This is where you would delete them. If you no longer need them for any reason, or you just want to start from scratch, you can do that. But in this case, I'm going to close this real quick. So I've got this name range, or this range selected. I go back to name manager, open that. Actually, I just click on new. And so by default, it refers to the range that I have selected here. It's B2 through B5. So that's kind of you don't have to highlight the range you want to name before you open that, but you can see how it can be very useful and actually very efficient. But it's currently named the first value in that range. I just want to name it genres. So I just go in here and rename that. I can click OK. And now it's shown in our list of named ranges. So if we close that and get out of that range, I can see here, now it's included in this list in the names. And if I click on it, it highlights that range. So that's important because it makes it a lot easier. Just like with formulas, this is going to make it a lot easier, or at least easier to read and more intuitive when we go and create our drop-down. So that's the next step. So I click into this cell, B12. This is where I want my drop-down. And so I'll go to the Home tab. I'm sorry, I'll go to the Data tab, actually. And so in the Data Tools group here, we have this Data Validation selection. And so if we select the drop-down, we select the first selection, which is Data Validation, and it opens this wizard here. So on the Settings tab, what we want to do is open up the Allow drop-down and go down and select List. And in this case, we'll just leave these default selections checked. We do want an in-cell drop-down, so that is a requirement, and we're going to leave the ignore blank box checked. And so now we need a source. Well, this is where you would normally put your range, and so I'll just show you that method. If I go here and select this, notice that here it doesn't put the cell references, and it puts the actual name of the named range because we have named it. Now I can alternatively go in here and just start typing genres, as long as I spell it correctly. And it would do the same thing. So now what we've done, you can see here, we now have this little drop-down handle here. And so when we click on that, it includes all the selections in that named range, which is pretty cool. So now you have a little trick you can go show all your work buddies or whoever. And if they don't know how to do it and they've never done it, you can probably get a lot of applause or oohs and ahs, whatever. But anyway, you see how simple that is, and it can be very useful actually, depending on what you want to do. If you're doing like, you know, I think I've used it in previous webinar tutorials that we did some lookups. I think the last one I did with lookups, I used some drop downs, and you can use this. If this is, you know, this cell reference is for your lookup value. If you have a list of values you want to put in there as you change it, if you have a lookup formula, it can be very useful, very practical, very useful, very effective. So now comes the really, really high leverage skill. So you know how to create a drop down. Well, you might run into some buddies that you're trying to impress and they say, oh, no problem, I know how to do that. Anybody can do that. Well, this is different. This is a dependent drop down, and not everybody knows how to do this. So now that we've got our first drop down, let's do a couple of things. So we've named this range. What we really need to do is actually what I need to explain first. In order to create a dependent drop down, your ranges have to, your headers for your dependent ranges have to match the values in your primary drop down. So look what we have here. So we have comedy, romance, all the genres. So those have to match, not actually your headers. I guess actually what I should have said, that's not completely accurate. They have to match named ranges. So for this range of comedy movies, we have to name this range comedy. It has to match these values in your primary drop-down for it to recognize what to pull into your secondary or your dependent drop-down. So let's do that. So comedy, we'll highlight that, and let's just go back to the formulas tab in our name manager, and we're going to select new, and we're going to name that comedy. And hit enter, and now that shows up in our list. And now I can continue to, without closing that, I can continue to create my named ranges. What I'm going to do here is clear that out, and I'm going to select the romance, range of romance movies, and I'm going to be sure and rename that range romance. Okay, and now the romance is there. And to so I was going to say you can actually, if you go in here and edit, yeah. So back here, if you wanted to double check while you're still in the wizard, I'm going to try and close that down a little bit just so you can see. So we have romance selected. If you click on edit and get into this edit name window, if you click in that refers to range, you'll see the dotted line, the dashed line, the dancing hands, whatever you want to call it, show up. So it'll kind of help you validate, okay, romance, yes, that's the range I wanted. So we either click OK or cancel, and we can continue on creating our named range. So we'll click new. This one's going to be action. And then we're going to back this out, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to select the action movies only, and then click OK. So we've now got action. If I click on edit and click into the refers to, you can see that yes, we can validate that's correct. And then the last one will be psychological thriller. So here's the thing. So remember that a named range name cannot have a space in it. So what we're going to have to do here is we'll have to decide. Do we want to just remove the space or use an underscore? I'm going to use an underscore. So I'll click OK, and psychological thriller, look at it, and yes. Oh, crap. See, that's why you should double check that. I got ahead of myself. So I'll select that range. Okay, and then just one more time, just make sure, and okay, good. So we have that range selected, the correct one for psychological thriller. All right, so now we close that. So now we can make our secondary dropdown, or our dependent dropdown. The next thing we need to do is just like we did before. We need to go to Data, the Data tab, and in Data Tools, go to Data Validation and select that dropdown. Go to Select Data Validation, and on the Settings tab, in the Allow dropdown, again, we want to select List. But in this case, we're not going to select an actual range source. We've got to use a formula or a function, a built-in function. So we're going to type equals. And the function we need to type is indirect. And so we open our parentheses, and the cell reference we're going to be referring to is the cell reference is going to be our genre. So I could either type that in or select that cell. Actually, that's not genres. I'm sorry. I thought we had a name range for that. We could have done that, but we'll just go with B12 right now. Close that parentheses and click OK. And sometimes it'll tell you have an error. But so I'm going to type that. Now we have this drop down. And look what's happened. So we've selected comedy here, and in this drop down for movies, it's just showing us the comedies in that list, in that comedy's named range. So pretty cool. Now we select romance. Let's just verify all this. And again, it's the same list from only romance now. And if we wanted to select from action movies in our list, we can select action in the genre, and we've got nothing but the action movies. And then we go to psychological thriller, and we have a bit of a problem. And I wonder if anybody can guess what that problem is. So what's happened here is, if you remember, I said our named ranges have to match exactly the value that's in our primary drop-down list. Well, the problem with this is, and this is just a pitfall of using named ranges, which is unavoidable when it comes to as far as I know, is unavoidable when you're doing dependent drop-downs, because we have named ranges here that can have no space. So we've got psychological thriller that has an underscore. Well, that's not exactly the same as this value, so Excel doesn't recognize it. So when we select psychological thriller from our genre drop-down, we get nothing. I'm clicking on this and I've got nothing. It has nothing to select from. Because as far as Excel is concerned, there is no psychological thriller with a space that there's a named range you can refer to. So it doesn't exist. Well, so this is where I kind of show you a little bit of a sort of a life hack in Excel. This is where it kind of gets fun. So when at the beginning when I talked about how I kind of went through a mind shift at one point where I started thinking in terms of this being a tool that you can solve really pretty much any challenge that comes your way, you kind of have to get in that mindset. How do I get around this? Because I've got to have this. I've got to have this dependent drop-down. Well, so what I've done here is I've created a list. It's what I kind of call a ghost list. So I actually have a list that's already typed in here, but I had whited out the font so you couldn't see it. So I'll go back and clear that in with black here. So what we've got here is, if I can remember, okay, yeah, so I've got a list here that correlates with my genre list. And for these three selections, it's really moot. But for this one, this is the way we're going to work around it. We're going to create a lookup that's going to look this up, and we don't have to change anything about our genre dropdown. But what I'm going to do is, stay with me here. This is going to actually make sense, and for some of you, it's going to be, I'm having a lot of faith. It's going to have a life-changing effect for you. So what I want to do is I want to do a Vlookup, because now in this particular drop down, what I'm going to, instead of referring to B12, I'm going to refer to C12, and what I'm going to put in C12 is a Vlookup that brings in this name here. I hope this works. I hope I remember how to. So let me just get into it. So I'm going to Vlookup, and I can tab there. My lookup value is going to be this cell, and my table array. I'm not going to do a named range right now, just for the sake of time. I'm going to select that range, and now I want to pull from 2, 0 for exact, and that's going to bring in the psychological thrill. Yeah, this should work. So with that seen there, even if you don't know how to use Vlookup, it's not the point. The point is there is a way, there is a workaround, and this is one of the reasons I'm going to give this file over to Sydney. So if you can somehow download it, you can actually see my work and kind of go back into the nuts and bolts of it and try to follow along maybe when you rewatch this webinar. So let me go back here to my movie dropdown, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to backtrack, go to data validation, and open this up. And to edit this, I'm just going to change this to C. Capital C, but it doesn't matter. So let's see here. Romance. Obviously, that will work. Cross your fingers. I did this correctly. Yes. Okay, good. So now all of our psychological thrillers show up in this list, because what I've done is I've connected the values in this drop-down, which is sourced from this range here, to a lookup of this named range. Well, this is all great. It works, right? But it kind of defeats the purpose of all this. You know, if you got to use, it's not a great user experience. So, well, all you got to do is select this entire column, and if you want to go here to the font color, you can do what I call ghosting that out and just turn it white, and boom, you're done. So you select psychological thriller. This works just fine behind the scenes. Nobody knows any better, and you've made it work. So you know, you can ghost that out. You can hide. If you right-click, you can select hide. You could hide the column. Any of those techniques work. I mean, you just, again, this is just about that mindset of, you know, problem solving, and that Excel always holds some solution to your challenge somewhere if you can just figure it out and just think it out and bring all the skill set out of your toolkit onto the table and go from there. So that's what's really great about this webinar, is all these tips and tricks. That's the whole point, is learning all these little things here and there that as you use them, as you practice them, you continue to use them, you should just automatically start to think in such a way that you know Excel has a method, it has some functionality, some skill it offers, or some trick it offers, whether through built-in functions or whatever, to get the solution you're looking for. So anyway, I hope that's meaningful for everybody. So we'll move on from there. We'll now go to conditional formatting. And in this case, what we've got here is just some data. You know, we've got some financial data. Say maybe we've got this range of purchasing data, or actually just some personal finance data, maybe debits and credits. And we want to use some conditional formatting to kind of dress this up and make it more, not just visually appealing, but even visually useful. So the first thing I want to show you is, let's look at this column with the amount. One thing you can do, just a real quick hit on what conditional formatting does. If we go to the styles group on the home tab, we'll click on this drop down for conditional formatting. It'll highlight in certain ways. There's a lot of these built-in ways, and you can actually customize. We won't get into too much customization, but there's a lot of built-in available conditional formatting here in Excel that actually it's quite a lot that it offers, so it's very useful. So in this case, let's say what we want to do is we want to highlight all the cells that are less than 0, red. One of the red, you can see it automatically does that. It's one of the first selections, this light red fill with a dark red text. But we're going to change this to 0. So it's, see here it says format cells with that are less than 0. So I want all the negatives, which will be all the debits in this particular scenario, light red with dark red text. And I'll click OK. I also want to add a second rule. So I'll go back to conditional formatting, and then I'll look at, actually, I can highlight greater than 0 green. So there's a lot of built-in selections here that I'll use. I'll go with green fill, dark green text. Now click OK. You can't see it on screen, but if we continue to scroll down, we can see that all the positive values are going to be highlighted with a green background and green text. So we see all the, quickly, we can see all the credits versus the debit if we need to scroll down. The other thing, actually, let me undo this. I want to show you this quick shortcut. So the other thing we can do is we can filter on the colors instead of just the values. And quick tip here, if you don't already know, if you highlight that header row, Control-Shift-L is the keyboard shortcut to activate filters. And then, in fact, another great tip in this particular case scenario, as you scroll down, you notice that the header row scrolls out of view. If you want to keep that locked at the top, all you have to do is go to the View tab, and go to the Window group, and here on Freeze Panes, just select Freeze Top Row. And now as you scroll down, your headers remain in place. And this is pretty self-explanatory. This is the date, amount, balance, what have you. But if this was a lot of data, it was hard to remember what was what. If you freeze your top row, that can be very helpful. So a couple of little tips there. Control-Shift-L to activate your filters, and Control-Shift-L again just deactivates them, so it just toggles back and forth. And then how to freeze the top row. So if I wanted to filter on all the credit amounts, how would I do that? I mean, there's all these, I mean, I could go down these filters and I could just unselect all and then just select all the positive numbers. But since I've already used conditional formatting, I can select this filter by color. And notice here, because we both got a cell color fill and a font color, it gives us the option. So we can either select the green fill to select all the credits and filter those out, or we could also go back. I will let me undo that, clear that, and then I could actually go in here and filter by color, font color, same difference. We're going to get the same result. So not only does conditional formatting kind of color code things and make it easier to look at, and in this particular case, if you're just browsing it, it's definitely makes it easy for you to pick out, the credits. But it also allows you the option to filter based on those rules, which can be very helpful. So the next thing is another form of conditional formatting that can be kind of cool. Can be help you kind of visualize your data. So I'll select these balances, and then I'll go to conditional formatting, and I'll go to data bars. And there's different ways about it here. I'll try a couple of different ones, but we'll go to data bars here, and you'll notice as I select them, it kind of already makes them available in that range to kind of let you preview. So you can select different colors. This one has a gradient fill, and these are solid. So if I wanted to select, let's say that's a good sort of contrast. So I can go up and down the row, and you can see that the data bars are directly related to the amounts. So as the amounts are decreasing, so is your data bar. You can see here some pretty big jumps. So again, it just helps you kind of visualize your data. So because it kind of helps you, well, these are pretty small amounts. Obviously, it's pretty. The changes from one to the next is pretty small. They start to kind of increase here. So you're starting to notice there's some pretty big jumps, which correlates with these amounts. And then down here you get that idea. We can also, just to show you a different take or a different look, we can do the color scales. Actually, let me, the other thing, this is a great segue to manage your rules that are already in place. You can open up that manage rules down here at the bottom of this conditional formatting drop down. If you go to manage rules, it shows you the rules that are already in place for that selected range. And I can just delete that rule. You can add a new rule, you can edit that rule, you can change all that. Now I apply, and then those data bars are gone. So if I go back here, now I can add color scales, which is kind of cool, depending on what you're looking for. And in this particular case, it's backwards. I want to do, yeah. So this one's kind of makes sense. So I select this color, this rule here. So as the balance is higher, it stays green. As it starts to decrease, it fades out and starts getting into the pink and the red as it gets lower and lower, and then it gets back to a certain stage. So that's just another way to kind of visualize your data with conditional formatting. The next thing to do was show you how to use, and this is sort of another sort of, I would classify this as a bit of a life hack, an Excel life hack, because it goes off just a normal idea of, I'm just going to put in place some sort of conditional formatting and be done with it. So let's say I wanted to create some what we call stoplights for a certain criteria. And so what I want to do is I want to create stoplights that says if these are less than 0 or they're debits, then I want to have like a red stoplight or something to that effect. What I need to do first and foremost, I'll just put a header here. I don't know. I'll just put flag for now. And so what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to put a little formula here that says if, and if you haven't seen the webinar on logical functions, you might want to go back and take a look at that. But this is just a simple if function, which basically you test for some logic and then put a value in here that you want it to return if it's true and a value if it's false. And you kind of dictate the value that you want coming out of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select B2, and if that's less than 0, that's my logical test. So I want to test if B2 is less than 0. If it is less than 0, if that's true, then I want this formula to return the absolute value of B2, which means I just want the value. I don't want it whether it's negative or positive. And what that really means is I'm just trying to transform any of these values into positives, because I just need magnitude. I don't need negative or positive. So in order to do that, the built-in function for absolute value is simply ABS. And so you just put the number in, or the cell reference for that. So I do that, and then a comma for the value if it's false. So if that is false and it's not if B2 is not a negative, then I don't want anything in this cell. I want it to be blank. So I just put in double quotes with nothing in between it. That's how you make a blank. So what I've done there is I've gotten the absolute value of 150 or negative 150. And if I build this down, I'll go to the bottom of my range again, and Control-Shift up includes that row where I've already had the formula, and then Control-D. And that fills everything down. So what we should see here is for all credits, there's nothing but a blank. And so what I want to do here is, let's say I want to flag certain debit amounts if they're greater than some number. Let's say I want to flag amounts that are greater than 150 to be a red stoplight. And then let's say if it's greater than 75 but not greater than 150, I want a yellow stoplight. Anything less than that gets a green stoplight. So what I can do here is I can go to Conditional Formatting, and these icon sets here. So we got directional, you've got shapes. So what I need to do is select these stoplight shapes. And what I've got to do is I've got to actually go and edit this. So I'll go to Conditional Formatting, I'll go to Manage Rules, and let's see, Edit Rule. And so when you click on Edit Rule, down here in the Edit by Rule description, you've got this little section here that says icon green value is whatever. What I want to do, let me change this and start with red. I'm going to say, actually I'm going to do that. You can't change these. So it's got to be less than or equal to 75. So anything less than 75 gets a green stoplight. I'm sorry, that's greater than. My fault. I'm not paying attention. So I can change this to red. Sorry, I'm going to confuse you guys. I was looking at the clock, so trying to rush through this without being too fast. So the red stoplight is going to be greater than or equal to 150. And then on the next one, the yellow stoplight is going to be greater than or equal to 75. And then anything less than that, we'll change this to green. And I got to change this. I should have changed this before. So now it's going to zero that out. So make sure you change the type to number in this particular case. Do it first. And so, yeah, so I've got those ready, and now I just click OK. And then click Apply here, click OK. And so you notice these values that are less than 75 have a green stoplight. Well, this one's above 75, but it's less than 150, so it has a yellow stoplight. And then these you see are above 150, now have a red stoplight. Well, that's great, and you could leave it that way. I don't like it because I don't need these numbers here, because all I want is a flag. You know, I just want these stoplights to show up where these value amounts correspond to the rule. Well, so I can do kind of exactly what I did before in our previous example. Isn't that all the way down? Well, it doesn't matter. I'll just show you this real quick. So what I did before on the previous example is I made these sort of just ghost values. So I can click on this white for my font, change those to white values, and then I can kind of close this down. So now I have this this flag column without the value showing. You can actually see, I actually should have, but you can see some of the font overlapping, so you have to make this a little bit bigger. But anyway, it's sort of a life hack if you wanted to have some sort of conditional. You can, it's just another way you can use conditional formatting than just highlighting values. And then you can set these rules and say you're just trying to keep an eye on those that are above or below some value. And again, if you use your filters, you can filter by color, and you've got your icon sets down here, filter by cell icon. So if you want to say, when did I spend over 150? You can isolate all those by this flag here. So it's just another kind of, I won't say random, but another way, another idea, another possibility for using conditional formatting. I know I'm running close on time, so let's go look here. So in this example, I want to show you some other, so I've used some icon sets here in this particular situation. I've used my movie list, all the movies from our previous examples, and I have these columns for the genre. And I've put them in a particular type of format here that's a little bit different than having them horizontal. And so let me just kind of walk through how you can do a couple of these things, and I'll see how far we get. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this range over here, and we'll just try to get started. And so one of the things that you need to do first is fill in your column headers. Well, this is a situation where I wanted to show you how to transpose. So we can go back to our make a drop down list here. Over here where our ranges with our genres, I'll just Control-C to copy that, and then move over here to the movies list page where we were. And now I can Control-V. I think I can do Control-Alt-V. And if you do Control-Alt-V, it brings up this paste special wizard. And so you've got all these different options. I want to paste values. I can type V and just hit enter, and that'd be like clicking OK. So I would, at this point, just a quick encouragement, learn that Control-Alt-V shortcut, because if you start to learn these shortcuts, like I do paste values, and paste formulas, paste formats all the time, and it's so much faster than doing everything with the mouse. So if you do a Control-Alt-V, this comes up, and you can look at it, and you can see the letters that are underlined in all these. That's the next letter you would type. So if I wanted to paste values, I just type V and then hit enter. You don't even have to click OK. So hitting V and enter is the same thing as selecting values and clicking OK, and it's much faster. But in this particular case, I wanted to show you down here, we have this transpose option. So if I click, or if I type E, I didn't click that. You see I didn't move my mouse. If I click E, it selects that. And everything else, all the other defaults remain. Then I click enter. And notice what it's done is taken that list that was vertical, and it's now pasted it horizontally for me. So it's basically transposed. It's that transpose selection. And so now we have these headers. Well, what if I wanted to, I can use the format painter to fill in the same format, which would be pretty easy. But I can also do Control-Z. And again, if I arrow over, Control-Shift-Right, I've now selected that entire range, and I do Control-Alt-V again, and I just want to paste formats. So I type P and hit enter, and you're done. And I'm a format painter junkie. I mean, I'm always doing that, but I've gone to using this keyboard shortcut, this Control-Alt-V for pasting, paste special. And all you got to do is, I mean, pretty soon, if you use it over and over again, pretty soon you're hitting that T and enter, and it's so much faster than using the format painter. Especially if you're using keyboard shortcuts to navigate around like I did, like that over, and I mean, you're done. And I mean, you'll be doing stuff that takes you all day long and half the time, and you'll be looking for other things to do. So, well, the next step is, this is great and everything, but if I wanted to put these little icons in here, I don't need all this, you know, this vertical space, or I don't need all this width in these columns. How do I get it such that it's more like this, and you can actually read my headers? Well, notice what we've done here is if I select all of those headers, I can go to the alignment group here in the Home tab, and this little expansion arrow here, if I open that up, click on that, brings up the Format Cells wizard. And the only thing you've got to do is this little orientation box here allows you to change the orientation, the angle of your text. And so now, and you can even change it in this box by degrees, but you can always grab the end of this line and then move it however you like it, and we'll move it all the way vertical, and we'll click OK. And so now you've got this vertical orientation of your headers that makes a lot more sense if you don't have a lot of data in here. It just kind of condenses your table in a more practical manner. So the only difference is between this and the previous table is you can go back here to the alignment group, or and then I can change that to 45 degrees. No, it's not 47. Click 45, and then you've got that. That's kind of the gist of that. This, again, what I did here was, and I don't really have time to get into it, this will take at least 10 minutes to show you guys, but I've got some, I don't know if you can see the formulas, but I've got some formulas in here that kind of actually, I have some lookup. Oh, that's right. So just to show you, real quick what I did here. I'll unhide this. So I've got this section here where I use this match, if and match setup. It looks pretty gnarly if you're not used to looking at these formulas, but it's really not that hard. And so basically, I looked up these titles based on the different tables in our previous sheet here to get basically look up whether they exist in the comedy table, the romance, action, or psychological thriller table, and had it pop in a Y there. And then I basically did these icon sets based on whether a Y existed here or not. And so that's how I made that. It's kind of, again, it's kind of one of these life hack kind of things within Excel, and then you can hide that, and then you got nothing but icon sets, and then so you've got this list here that no matter whether it's, however it's sorted, you can quickly look Titanic, oh, it's classified in the romance category. The Hangover, oh, it's classified in the comedy category. Tell me the two action real quick. So it's just one of those things, kind of a fun example to show you, to get into all the, actually writing out the formulas and stuff would be pretty time consuming, and I know we're here close to the bottom of the hour, and I want to make sure there wasn't any questions that were being held, or if anybody wants to take the time right now and ask any questions about what we covered, maybe they need something clarified, or you want to go back over it real quick. So I'll throw it over to Sydney at this point.
Great. If anyone has any questions, I don't think anyone does. But thank you, Todd. As usual, all webinars are recorded, so if you want to watch it again or you couldn't watch all of it, this webinar will be up on our website. You can catch it whenever. Todd's also going to email me what he's been using here so that you can use that as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Todd, and we'll see you next week.